as I'm affectionately referring to the next two, we have the Lindas up next, and I've been asked to make certain that they have as much time as possible to talk, so I'm going to get going with the introductions. The first Linda is Linda Kingsbury, and her professional nursing career is varied, including public health nursing, primary care nursing, nursing education. She managed the Health Canada Public Health Agency of Canada Infection Control Guidelines program prior to moving to Vancouver. I can't read with my glasses on. Linda was the Regional Infection Control Coordinator for Vancouver Coastal Health Authority, and she participates in the Canadian Standards Association on the CSA Z314 series for sterilization of medical devices, and the 317.13 for infection prevention during hospital construction, renovation, and maintenance of healthcare facilities. She's a Canadian delegate and co-convener at the ISO 198 sterilization of medical devices, and she's audited and conducted quality assurance projects of reprocessing of medical devices and infection prevention and control across the continuum of care. This includes reviewing the management of medical devices in long-term care facilities. The little tidbit that Linda didn't include in her bio, but should have, is she was actually my co-conspirator in developing the concept for the first Virox Disinfection Symposium. And I have to say co-conspirator because when we started talking and planning the day, I had not yet gotten approval from Virox to do so. But I knew we'd do it. Next is Linda Jakeman, and she's retired and working from healthcare manager. And when I talked with the Lindas through the planning of this, they were often down somewhere warm, drinking margaritas while I was freezing in the winter. Not that I hold that against them. And let me see, where am I? So she's was working in the field of healthcare manager in a multi-facility sterile processing department for 30 years and has lots of expertise in sterilization and infection control processes. She's worked as a consultant in the medical device reprocessing department at South Health Campus in Calgary, Alberta, and she had a great time meeting all the new MDR technicians and being part of setting up and opening up one of the most modern MDR departments in Canada. And she's acting as a consultant now. She works very hard trying never to miss an opportunity to educate on what's new in the world of medical device reprocessing. And to add to her expertise in medical device reprocessing, in 2003, she successfully passed the Infection Control Practitioners course at Centennial College. She's past president of the Central Service Association of Nova Scotia and is also the recipient of the 2004 Canadian Standards Association Award of Merit. So I think you can easily see why the Lindas were the perfect choice for their topic of sterilization, sterilizers, and AERs, and I know you're going to learn a lot from their talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I'll just point out, we did not talk about dress code before coming from far and wide, but the front row, too, is all in black and white. So, we all got the memo. Yeah. Yeah, Nicole told us what to wear. So, yeah, we're delighted to do the presentation for you. That light is blinding. But, yeah, Linda and I started working on this presentation when we were in Palm Desert in November. So it's with pleasure that we recall what we've done here. So that we've got our learning objectives here, and I won't dwell on them. Hopefully we do cover them all. We think we do. And I'll go over some of the relevant standards and other resources that we have used and do refer to. So the Z314 series is the main series that Linda and others in the room and myself have worked on for years at the Canadian Standards Association. We now have the 0.0, which is the general requirements. And so the other parts of the series are becoming smaller and smaller as we revise based on having taken out the core elements and put them into the general requirements. The 0.3 is the sterilization by steam, and there's a new version coming out at the end of June or early July that I encourage you to make sure that you have. At the end of our presentation, we have an annex from an AMI document that is being put in the .3, the new version, the 2014 version of the .3 steam sterilizing standard. So we have included all of that information on our slides, and we kept it there so that you'll have access to that for your reference, but we aren't going into that detail in the presentation. So 314.8 is the decontamination document, and that's where you will find the section on endoscope reprocessing. And that's what I'll be talking about for a couple of minutes. And then the 314.23 is the chemical sterilization of reusable devices. And that's a relatively new standard, and it's important that you are familiar with that. And of course, some of the technologies in that document are the AER technologies and chemicals. So another resource for you is a textbook. Some of you would know Jerry McDonald, and so his textbook is a great resource. And then the 314.7 is the installation of the steam sterilizers in healthcare facilities. So if you're purchasing new sterilizers, that's the standard to have. And if you need to refer to the specifications for steam sterilizers, that's the standard then. The 17665 is adopted from ISO, and that's the moist heat standard, so that's another resource for you on steam sterilization. And then the 15882 is also a CSA adopted ISO document on chemical indicators. And it's a fabulous resource, very readable. And I know many of us find chemical indicators a challenge to understand. So I do encourage you to use that as a resource. Now, of course, there's CSGNA and SGNA when we're talking about endoscopes. So those resources are itemized for you. And then there's Health Canada, Public Health Agency of Canada guidelines. The GI guidelines are on their website, and the routine practices and additional precautions have been revised and they're posted. So another resource that's important for you to be familiar with are the ORNAC standards. What I'm wanting to bring to your attention are references and resources for you as infection prevention and control practitioners to go to. The more you know, the more comfortable you will be going and working with the MDR folks. So Alberta Health Services has some fabulous resources on their website. So you just go into Alberta Health Services, information for professionals, and you can learn a lot about many, many things, but they have virtually everything posted there. Their policies, training videos, it's just, and PowerPoint presentations. So you can learn a lot from their website. And then, of course, you're going to hear from Dr. Alpha later today. And, you know, I encourage you to try to dig into some of her many published research articles. Now, this is an article that is new in the MMWR from January. And I will talk about it in a few minutes as we're talking about AERs, because it brings up some new challenges with reprocessing of endoscopes, and particularly some of the most challenging of our scopes. So anyway, that article gives the summary of an outbreak in Illinois recently with antimicrobial resistant organisms. So the take-home message today is that every area, every facility that's reprocessing needs to have your own facility reprocessing policies based on the current standards. So you need to be referring to the current Canadian standards and use them then for your own policies. and keep them current, keep them where people can use them and refer to them. Now this is a neat diagram from Jerry McDonald's text showing that reprocessing is a process. It's not you get the used instrument and put it in the sterilizer. There's a whole process involved, and every step of the process needs to be followed carefully for you to have the positive outcome that you desire. Now, there's new terminology with reprocessing. So MDR is a term that was coined actually in Winnipeg, and it's adopted all through Canada. So it's used now by Health Canada, the Canadian Standards Association, and Accreditation Canada. So it replaces the old terms that, like sterile supplies, central services, many of those old terms. So, you know, all across Canada, MDR departments are using the new terms. What else is new is the CSA definition of reprocessing, and the presentation includes it on the next slide. And I'm not going to go over that, but you can look at it in the standards. And then Linda's talking about flash sterilization, which is now called immediate use steam sterilization, IUSS. And it does not have a standard of its own anymore. Flash sterilization years ago did, but it's been incorporated in the last two versions of the .3, the steam sterilization standard. So there's your current definitions from the CSA 0.0 general requirements. And then when we're talking reprocessing, we're talking one-way workflow to ensure that the reprocessing flows from dirty to clean, to ensure that there's adequate space between dirty and clean. So you'll see some designs of reprocessing areas as we go along. And I mean, they are model designs. And as you, I encourage you as ICPs to become familiar with the reprocessing teams. Make sure you know throughout your facilities where reprocessing is occurring, and monitor that wherever the reprocessing is occurring, whether it's in the endoscopy suite or in the OR, that the policies and procedures for reprocessing are being met as if the devices were being reprocessed in MDR. Ideally, when reprocessing is occurring outside of the central MDR, the personnel from MDR are the personnel in the suites where the reprocessing is occurring elsewhere, because they've been trained. So you've all heard of MIFU, and you hear that phrase frequently down in MDRs. And you'll hear both Linda and I talk about the manufacturer's written instructions. Getting tickled here. I think we're set. I think it would have died by now if you didn't have it fixed right. Okay. Well, you're not far away anyway. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you then, see, the Canadian Standards Association has been doing a lot with certification of medical device reprocessing. And so they have an online training course, and they also have examinations for certification. And it's just excellent that CSA has moved ahead on this. And when we're finished, Linda is heading off to Montreal to train some technicians there to take the exam. So the slide just shows you what the qualifications are. And I also wanted to point up that Alberta's the first province. I am a native Albertan, I should say. I was going to say I'm not an Albertan. I'm not one now, but it's home. I'll always be an Albertan, yeah. And so Alberta is the first province to require certification for MDR staff. And they did fund the MDR staff to take their exams. And so other provinces are moving forward in that way as well. So it's important that the ICPs be involved in the purchase decisions of both the scopes and the AERs. And that's one reason I wanted you familiar with the standards. There are other standards too for you to work with, and so you can always contact Linda or myself or anybody else that's active with CSA if you are purchasing an AER, for instance, and you want more specifications and more information. But basically you need to make sure that the manufacturer has validated their equipment for the scopes that you either have in your inventory or are intending to purchase. There's evidence that if everything is done according to standards, so if all reprocessing guidelines are followed for endoscopes, assuring that all of the scope contacts the disinfectant for the adequate contact time, then your outcome is safe for the patients. The challenge now is endoscope design is such a challenge, and I'm sure Michelle will be talking more about this later, but a lot of our conversation with endoscopes and AERs has to do with the challenges because of the design of some endoscopes. The lumens are just getting smaller and smaller. Some of the equipment is just more and more fragile, and not to mention expensive. So that's where I was. And this is an example of sort of a standard endoscope, but there's some that are much finer than that. I encourage you to become familiar with this decontam standard because it has a lot of aids for you so that you'll feel comfortable going into the reprocessing areas where they are reprocessing endoscopes, talking to the staff, observing, learning, asking for the daily record, what scopes have been reprocessed today, what procedures have been done, so that you're checking documentation, but you're also checking procedure, you're observing, and you want to make sure that they know that you are there as a resource, because the MDR folks have their specialty, and the ICPs have a lot to contribute in the MDR in terms of the routine practices and just a lot of teaching that you can do. But if you just look at the .8 decontam standard, and it's so readable, and you will feel very comfortable. It has a checklist at the end and a lot of aids for you. I think I've covered. I just wanted to mention there are new developments with AERs. There's different technology coming out, and so some facilities have already purchased AERs that claim to have a cleaning cycle. And I know Dr. Alpha's done some work with these and can speak about it later if she has the time. And then, but I've also spoken with some experts, some of the MDR managers who've purchased these systems, and they're not using the cleaning cycle. They're not relying on the AER cleaning cycle, so they still are maintaining their two previous cleaning processes prior to the endoscope going into the AER. Some new AERs have a leak test, and some of them also offer the alcohol rinse cycle. Then this is an example. Linda gave me this one of a model endoscope cleaning area. And you can see there's adequate separation from where the dirty scope comes in and the cleaning occurs, 3 sinks, and then the clean scope at the other end ready to be brought to the AER. That's just a sample AER. Here's some of the monitoring, and it's in Annex G of .8. And the key here is for you to check what you can yourself, and what you cannot check, you call the manufacturer to check. When you are going into the MDR or wherever they are using the AERs, check the maintenance reports and make sure that the manufacturer's instructions for the maintenance of the AERs and of the scopes is being followed. Documentation is important, and you can check that documentation. So I've got the points there. Now I would like you to enjoy Linda's presentation.
Thank you, Linda. First, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me here today. I just love this stuff. This stuff just rocks, you know. So hopefully you will enjoy my presentation. I want to say a welcome to everyone and a huge welcome to all the visitors from the other provinces. Hope you're enjoying our just wonderful weather. It's so warm. And that, however, hope you put enough time on your trip that you can go and see some of the sites around the province, because I'm sure you'll find something that you can enjoy. So I have a really huge amount of information to go through today, so I'm going to go through some of it quite quickly. Again, remember the standards that Linda's referenced in that. There's where the devil's in the details. That's where it all is. I'm just going to give you the highlights on a lot of these things. And at the end of the day, I will stop. We'll take a few questions, and then you'll have your exam. Okay? So your take-home message for today is know the different types and sizes of sterilizers that are out there. You're going to know a little bit about the key elements of a quality assurance program, the expected response to a sterilization event, and how MDR departments monitor the steam sterilization process. Some of the different sterilization parameters that are out there, and key tips on how to solve some wet packs. I'm becoming the queen of wet packs, I will tell you quickly. So, steam sterilization is the oldest method and trusted method for sterilization. It's used in most of the healthcare facilities today. It's very safe and it's very inexpensive. If you have a choice of sterilization methods, steam sterilization should always be your first choice. It is the gold standard for sterilization. Steam sterilization is a major responsibility of the sterile processing technician. The sterile operator must be knowledgeable in all phases of steam sterilization cycle and how to monitor. Excuse me, I've got to have a drink there. That frog. Well, that's a really good drink. Just saying. So the steam sterilization technician must be really knowledgeable in all the phases of steam sterilization. And as Linda indicated, there's a lot of steps that take place before you get to put it into the sterilizers, and they're very clean, very clear. If you can't clean it, you cannot sterilize it. So it's about as simple as that. You know, to be successful in the next steps, it has to be clean. And of course, there are many different types and sizes of sterilizers. I'm going to quickly go over the different types and how they work. Steam sterilization by gravity is the oldest method used. Steam enters the chamber from the top, moving the air towards the bottom of the drain vent at the bottom of the chamber, causing the displacement of air. It's very important to that all the air is removed from the chamber and packages. If any air is present, it causes cold spots or air pockets that will prevent the contact of the sterilant to the devices. This will cause wet packs and sterilization failures. So gravities are really, really sensitive on how with loading, and I'll talk a little bit about loading in the future in a few slides ahead. Tabletop sterilizers use gravity. A lot of tabletop sterilizers use gravity to introduce steam, and it's very important, especially with these little tabletops, that they're loaded properly, ensure that there's enough room around the packages so the steam and drying can go around those packages with the devices that are being sterilized. Gravity sterilizers are found in many clinics throughout the hospitals and dental areas, so you're probably more familiar with them than what I think you may be. Dynamic air removal sterilizers or pre-vacuum sterilizers, which remove the air from the chamber with the use of a vacuum. This method is much more effective in removing the air from all the packages. This type of sterilizers, it does require additional monitoring. It would require a Class 2 chemical indicator. And this indicator is basically just an air removal test. It just shows that the air has been taken out of the chamber. And I'll show you what that looks like and how you would interpret that test. So often as an ICP or an MDR manager, we're often asked to take part in purchasing of the sterilizers. Before purchasing a steam sterilizers, it's very important to understand the type of sterilizers that are required for the devices that are being sterilized. The workload, the volume of your cases, the number of sets of instruments that will be required, and the turnaround time. The turnaround time for these sets and different packages, it's key because there's more than just the sterilization time. As we said, there's the transport, there's many things to know. And I should mention before I go ahead with the rest of the slides that the pictures that I'm about to show you come from many different manufacturers and companies. I don't sell sterilizers or product, so it's just for your learning purposes only. So, you know, love them, and love them, right? So there's different ones out there, and it's not all inclusive of everything. So the next few pictures are just pictures of different types of sterilizers and how they're intended to be used. The first one is the cart loading steam sterilizer, and this is one of the older models out there, and you'll see a lot of them in the older facilities. It has a handle that you wind around to close. The more modern ones might have a close handle, but the important thing to see about this sterilizer is loaded with on a cart. A carriage is on a cart, and it's pushed into the chamber, so it's retrieved in the same way. So these sterilizers, with any sterilizer, tabletop or this size, loading is it's so important to allow that steam and the air to get around again. So the next one is a floor loading sterilizer, and this is a more modern sterilizer that's out there. And the cart itself, the whole cart, including the wheels, will go into the sterilizer. There's older ones around, and they are really good workhorses. And some of these floor loading sterilizers actually will come into a pass-through sterilizer. And the pass-through sterilizers, well, of course, keeps that one-way workflow happening all the time. You package, sterilize, and it comes out into your case cart pick area. And these, all the sterilizers today have several cycles. They'll have different ways that you could put in your parameters for your sterilization that you're looking for. This particular one can do some gravity, and it also can do some liquid cycles. So there's many, many different cycles and lots to learn around these. The next one is the immediate use flash sterilizer. And this is found in most operating rooms today. And this is a more modern looking one than some of the older ones out there. This one here actually has a printer, and this printer capability for any sterilizer is so important, because what you want to do is to be able to save that documentation so that if there's an incident or an occurrence within the facility, that you can go back and actually look, hey, what happened at MDR? They might have been having trouble with preventive maintenance, they might have and then again, everything could have been just perfect, and move on to something else to see if there's an issue with any other transportation problems or anything like that. The next ones are the little tabletop sterilizers, and these are finicky little things. And that I can tell you some stories, but I don't have enough time. and the documentation with this and the monitoring process with these sterilizers in a lot of the clinical areas are really lax. And these sterilizers require the same monitoring and the same process as the larger sterilizers within the MDR department. There's no exceptions, and documentation is so key. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So that's basically what you would look at if you were going to go in and audit one of these sterilizers. This one here is more of a tabletop one, and you can see that the trays are loaded on this particular picture. Level or on top, but there's a good space in between each. They don't touch the sides of the chamber, so if the space if the space is not there, or you touch the side, or the tray touches the side of the chamber, it will cause a wet pack in these. And this particular one, this whole loading system can go on its side, so you can put your packages on the edge, so that if the device requires that, you can sterilize them like that. So there's different ones out there. There's some really old ones out there. And the thing with the tabletops, again, is the printing capability, or you need to be able to look at that record, because often when you start a sterilizer, you will start it, go ahead and do something else and come back. But you need to review those parameters that are around what actually happened within that sterilizer. This here just shows some peel pouch packages. These are laid flat, but in one layer they're not stacked. And with peel pouch packages, what's really important with that, they're so misused out there. They're only made to hold maybe 1 or 2 instruments, not 10, 15, just 1 or 2, and they need to be situated in these sterilizers so that that steam and air can still move around it and dry it properly. Because if the package comes out wet, it's not sterile. You'd have to reprocess the whole package. So the elements of quality, it's very important that policies and standards and operating procedures that are developed are in compliance with current and national standards, so the facility can provide the highest quality of product, ensuring, of course, patient care and staff safety. Standard operating procedures are found in most manuals. On the slide, you're going to see different ones. You will find copies of these manuals must be available to all staff that are responsible for the reprocessing of the medical devices. So if you've got a little clinical operation, every device that they have in that clinic, there should be a standard operating procedure for that, so that the people working in the clinic have access to that information. It's important to keep these manuals updated on a regular basis when changes occur or as a result of an incident. It's very important for the staff to really understand the manufacturer's instructions. The level of reprocessing will depend on the intended use of that device. The manufacturer will tell you how to prepare that device for transport. They will tell you how to pre-clean it, how to disassemble it if it's required, how to package that device, which is very important, the level of disinfection or sterilization that is required and the type of sterilizer that you're going to use that is needed for that. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the monitoring for that. So in MDR, or in the clinical areas, you monitor in 3 ways: chemically, biologically, and mechanically. So I'm going to quickly review some things. I'll go over some of the steps in monitoring steam sterilization. For more details, again, go to your STEAM standard, Z314.3, and you'll get more detailed information. So there are different classes of chemical indicators, 1 to 6. It doesn't mean the higher the number, the better the indicator. Each class has a special use. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions and understand what it is you want to monitor. As an ICP or an MDR manager, you're often asked to take part in the purchasing or selection of these items. So when you're asked to do that, please consider the following: the intended use of the sterilizer indicator, the correlation and the performance of the parameters described in the label. Exactly what is it that you want that indicator to do, and what is it going to be monitoring? The ease of use, including the interpretation, which is so needed, because the MDR can really understand the chemical indicators, but at the point of use, you want to be able to have that education out there that they can open their package, check their indicators, and be assured that they're proceeding with the sterile package. If there's any requirements for disposal or storage of the device, you want to know that up. And the quality of service of the supplier, which is really key. You want to make sure that you have technical support, education support, including staff in services and training. And this thing is not only at the time of signing the contract. You want to make sure that that service is available throughout your whole contract, so when you bring in new staff, that you're able to get that staff in service, or have staff that have been there for 20 years, and they may need the refresher, you know, to be able to do that. So you want to have regular in-services on that. So I want to quickly go through the chemicals. Class 1 is the process indicator, and it distinguishes processed from unprocessed goods. On this slide, you'll see some labeling for the containers, the autoclave tape. That autoclave tape has chemical on it that changes when it goes through steam sterilization. Masking tape, it looks like it might be masking tape, but it's not. It's a chemical. It's got a chemical on it, and it will change. So it's really, most of these things are kept on outside of the package, so you know that package has been through a process. That's all it's telling you. The last thing over there is the load gun. We call it load gun. And it talks about the load, the date, the sterilizers. There's a lot of pertinent information in there, and this information is part of your documentation that you're going to keep for your sterilization. So Class 2, excuse me. A Class 2 chemical indicator is an air detection, PCD. It's a Class 2 chemical indicator, and it's determined rather for air removal, the Bowie Dick. And on the next slide, you'll see the Bowie Dick tests, and these tests are performed daily when the sterilizers are being used first thing in the morning to make sure that all the steam has been pulled, all the air's been taken out of your sterilizer. So if you look at the picture, you can see the chemical indicator is yellow and white, and that's prior to going into sterilization. Once it goes into the sterilizer, the chemical changes to a black. And if there's an inconsistency in the black, that's a failure. So you want to take that particular sterilizer out of service and find out what the issues are around the air. Because if the air is present, of course, you can't sterilize it. The Class 3, I'm still looking for the picture, is I haven't been able to find one, found lots of information on it, but not the picture that I could steal. So sorry about that, I apologize. The Class 3 reacts to one critical parameter, and this is usually used for radiation, so that's probably why I don't have a copy of one, because you're not likely to do that. Although some of the newer hospitals that are out there, they're doing lots of research into radiation, so it may be something in your future. A Class 4 chemical indicator is placed in each package prior to sterilization. And this indicator is read at point of use. It just tells you that your package, you've looked on the outside, it's got in the sterilizer. When you look on the inside of the package, you're going to find this chemical indicator and say, the steam has made it here. So that's what you want to know. So Class 5 chemical integrating indicators, and this is going to really mess me up, but a Class 5 integrating indicator is correlated to the biological. It's for use in different temperatures and times. It's for 250 Fahrenheit to 275 Fahrenheit in pre-vacuum and gravity sterilizers. It's easy to read. It's got a front indicator that moves. You can see on the slide that if it moves or it doesn't move, you've got a fail. So you can really tell if it's an easier indicator to move. The next is Class 6, and it's an emulating indicator. Because they are not required to correlate to the BI, they do not perform as a BI. So if you're using the Class 6 emulator, it's going to respond to a lower temperature where your BI will be more of a challenge. So it's a good indicator that you're going to wind up with a sterile process, but you still need to have your BI to have that BI read out, because the BI, in fact, could fail. So it's both. So I want to go into a little bit about biological, if I don't have you bored to death by now, but biological monitoring. The need for if you're out there purchasing the biologicals, it's the same thing. You're going to want to say up front before you sign the contract, is there a need for any incubators or other special equipment used with the biological? And how easy it to monitor this and to calibrate the in the incubator. The ability of the biological indicator to manufacture or to supply the product on a consistent basis. Again, you don't want to be having have BIs within the facility only to run out to find out the supplier can't supply you with them. You want to make sure that you have a good resource to be able to get them and that they've got a good supply. With your BI, the BI PCDs come with a control, a package of controls. They'll come in a lot and they'll have a package of controls. These controls do not, that you put them in the incubator without processing, and the chemical or the enzyme in there will change to a positive. And then you have the one that was in the sterilizer, the test that you're measuring it against. So hopefully the one that went through the sterilizer process was pass and you'll fail. You'll pass and you'll fail. Oh my God. If you'll pass, it'll pass it. And it just shows you the difference in the media. So the control has live microorganisms, and the one that went through the sterilizer wouldn't. So again, there's more things to consider when you're purchasing your BIs, and refer to the standards for that. So a BI is just a little vial that holds the BI. A process challenge pack comes in many different things. It has the BI and it would have a different type of chemical indicator with it. Biological test pack is usually what's used. That's tested daily in the sterilizers and whenever an implant is used on a daily basis. And all this monitoring is all documented within departments. Biological test pack early release. This is one that has a test pack and it has an emulating integrator in it. And based on the indicator, you can release your load, but you still need to follow up with that biological, because many loads are released within the hospitals prior to the biological read. This gives you a little bit more assurance that, in fact, you've got a successful load there. And so it's really a good thing for the hospitals that have to release devices before the BI. So the next thing is mechanical monitoring. Mechanical monitoring includes keeping track of the physical parameters of the sterilizer, the time, the temperature, the pressure. Gauges and displays are shown during each cycle and are recorded on that graph printout or electronic record. At the end of the cycle, 2 minutes? Oh my goodness. Okay, there's I'm just going to go right to sterilization record keeping. Sterilization record keeping includes all your routine monitoring. Each step is documented, and this information can be organized or stored in envelopes in your binders. And this is really key, that you keep that information together, so if there is a look back, you can go see. And we'll go right to the last slide. I'm sorry about this because I want to talk about too much, and that would be me. We'll go to the end. I'd like to thank you for listening to me today. And I've got some special pictures there. Oh, these are my grandbabies. And the guy in the middle there, that's Tucker, T with the T. And he's the newest member to our family. And that's the youngest there with him. So thank you very much.